Fleetwood Mac enter the 80s after a slew of solo albums and putting the experimental sound of Tusk behind them. Or have they? You're not seeing things. Mirage is coming your way.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Eric, do you hear that?
What do I hear?
Nothing. It's just you and I. The seats are empty. It's an empty chamber tonight. The arena, the peanut gallery, we cleared them out. I threw them out.
I was starting to wonder,
Saying,
like it's been.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
But it's been a while. Yeah, we cleaned house.
Yep. So it's just us two. So we're doing some throwbacky stuff where certain albums that Eric and I do are particular to us. And
yes.
this is one of them. So if it's your first time joining us, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything, but it helps us so much. It really does. We're trying to get that subscriber count up, and you can be a part of it. Just hit it. We won't bother you that much. You'll get a notification when new episodes come out, and that's kind of like one hand washes the other, Yeah. You help us, we're going to tell you when new stuff comes out. That's easy. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast provider, go ahead and hit the follow button. Same thing. You'll get a gentle notification on your phone, let you know when we're here waiting for you.
Gentle.
Yeah, it's like a tap on the shoulder, like a friend who just kind of taps you on the shoulder, not a guy that like pushes you out of the way on the subway. Just a gentle reminder. Hey, there's a new episode out.
Yeah,
come check it out. It's here. It's free.
I think we should do an episode like that.
ASMR.
There you go.
ASMR.
maybe we'll put somebody to sleep. Who knows?
I think we've already done that.
Hey, you said it. I didn't. So
maybe myself included. I may have listened to some of our episodes, and depending on what time of the evening it is, and you just kind of drift off, which is fine though too. You know what?
Yeah.
If we help with your insomnia, I'll take that as a win.
Yeah.
Right?
Why not? I do. I mean, not necessarily. I'm not talking about us, but I'm talking about. There's a lot of things I listen to on YouTube and stuff to help me sleep. And
yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm right now. I'm watching Honeymooners episodes on YouTube, putting myself to sleep. I need something.
There's a comfort. Like sometimes if you put on something you're comfortable with,
right?
It doesn't. You're not thinking. Your mind isn't thinking about it. Your mind kind of it absorbs it and shuts off.
Absolutely. It is. It's comfort food. And it's,
Yeah, it's not a bad thing if you're listening to us.
It's like a security blanket. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like a warm hug.
Yeah. And so is this album.
Wow. Look at you.
Yeah. There's this album.
Segue.
Huh? There it is. There it is.
What the
F? In fact, I always felt this way about this record.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot going on with this album. For me as well. I actually had to do some research because there's some things I needed to, which we'll get to after we do the stats, and some things I needed to really just straighten out in my mind about this out. Like we talk a lot about when we got into this and when we got into that.
Mm-hmm.
And, so let me do the stats, and I think it's important to kind of talk about that, especially as the years go on, and you kind of, you start shooting around the target and you don't necessarily hit the bullseye when you're kind of talking about when you got into things. And I was really trying to sort it out. So we're going to tease that.
Okay.
If you're still awake with us, if you haven't fallen asleep into dreamland yet and you're not drifting off.
Here we go. We kind of opened up that Pandora's box.
Well, we should have done rumors because then, when we talked about the song Dreams, good.
Yeah.
Would have been apropos. But instead, this was released in July of 1982. The album is Mirage by Fleetwood Mac, produced by a veritable team of LA musicians / cokeheads / hard partiers. We got Lindsey Buckingham, Richard Dashut, Ken Calais, who was the father of Colby Calais.
Colby Calais, yep. Mm-hmm.
And Fleetwood Mac also got a production credit on there. Just if you were in the room when they turned a dial, you can probably get a producer credit. Yeah, I was there.
Absolutely.
I said make that lower.
Yeah.
There were 5 singles released. Hold Me hit number 4. Yes. Gypsy, number 12. Thought that did better than Hold Me. Love in Store hit number 22. I'm sorry. Love in Store hit number 22. Oh, Diane was a UK single release. Hit number 9. And it was the highest charting single from this album in the UK was Oh, Diane.
Yeah.
Go figure.
I'm not surprised, actually. I'm really not.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. If you ever spend any time watching like Top of the Pops on YouTube, like the episodes, and they do the countdowns, the UK audience likes quirky stuff.
Yeah,
like they're really into quirky, throwbacky, strange things. Anyway, it did hit number 35 on the adult contemporary American charts, and then Can't Go Back was a UK only single release. This hit number 1 on Billboard. Hey, hooray for Fleetwood Mac! They made a comeback after Tusk, because that did not hit number 1, and this went 2 times platinum. So that's in excess of 2 million copies.
Not bad.
Certainly not Rumors numbers.
Well, but nothing to sneeze at either.
Nothing to sneeze at, and a number 1 album. So this was kind of a lot of people felt this was a return at the time, a return to form, a return to the quote unquote Fleetwood Mac comfort feel. Because of refer to our Tusk episode. For that, because that came out in 79. So in between 79 and 82, a whole slew of solo albums got released. Mick Fleetwood put out his first solo album. Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham all put out solo albums. So that was marinating in the public consciousness. And then they regroup in 82 for Mirage.
It's interesting that, that it did go number 1, and it was... But to say that, critics didn't particularly find it, I think the general consensus is that the album they just played it safe with this record after because Tusk was not so successful with the artist, the sort of artsy kind of approach this album. And then I think what surprised me even more as I dug even to the well a little bit, reading some reviews for the record, Lindsey himself would go on to say that he was just kind of treading water, was the quote, which surprised me, because I find the songs on this record are very concise, very very well produced, and some of his finest work. So do you think that this album might have been maybe a little bit of a response to Law and Order in then sort of that quirky kind of sound that he just kind of developed with that record? And I think
you said you said a lot of stuff in there to unpack. Mick Fleetwood decidedly did not want to revisit the experimentation of Tusk, so he was looking to distance himself from that, not necessarily to make Rumors 2, but to say, well, what is Fleetwood Mac after this crazy album Tusk? That was a double album, that was a head scratcher. Stevie Nicks goes off, makes a solo album, and becomes, I'm doing air quotes for those watching on YouTube, becomes Stevie Nicks now.
Stevie Nicks, yes. He
becomes that, and that means a whole different thing. Lindsey Buckingham continues his experimentation with his first solo album, Law and Order, which he kind of, if you read interviews about that, he really disavows that. He goes, it's so campy, I don't know what was going on, which I love that album because it's so quirky and so strange.
Which I find, I think that that's his sound. That is his thing for me. Yeah. So
on Tusk, he's the only one that came out of Tusk I'm gonna use the wrong term, but he came out of Tusk like untouchable.
Yeah.
Meaning anything that he put himself in the position to do whatever he wanted. Whereas Stevie Nicks with Belladonna, that became that Stevie Nicks sound, and she kind of, boxed herself into these Stevie Nicks style songs. There's not anything really groundbreaking about anything she ever does. It's in her, there's a wheelhouse that she lives in, much like Christine. Yeah, Christine on this album, same thing. She wears her heart on her sleeve, but that's her strong suit. Is her when she falls in love with somebody and breaks up, you get the best material out of her. You really do.
Absolutely.
But Lindsey, on the other hand, but because did what he did on Tusk, and because he did what he did on Law and Order, he affords himself to do whatever. There is no Lindsey Buckingham style song because it's all different. Is the point I'm trying to make, right? There's nothing, the only thing you could say that's the same about all of his songs is that they're different. That's the only thing about them is each one has got some different quirkiness to him, and he sings in different vocal styles, and it's always, he's like a moving target, where Stevie Nicks always has the same vocal style. A lot of her phrasing is the same, and Christine to a lesser extent, because she writes like Love in Store and Hold Me, which are really kind of great stuff. But then she'll fall back into the ballad stuff. But her stuff is just so beautifully written and sung. Yeah, So yeah,
Lindsey, to your pretty point, much unleash the beast, as it were, with Tusk. He kind of unpacked that quirky, like really, in response to the punk scene and the new wave scene that was happening. So do you find that Mirage still reflects that? Or not?
Anything, his whole career,
I think,
his
I
career
agree.
Up until Out of the Cradle reflects that. Like,
I totally agree. Yeah.
Like Out of the Cradle kind of, he said, I'm going to put out like a proper kind of pop album, but it still has all that stuff is in him. I wrote in my notes that, he's kind of like the American Jeff Lynne at the time, because he was so experimental. He was layering, he was using, varying tape speeds. He was big into that and if you listen to the, let's go here for a second. For those on YouTube, you're watching, here's the album version of Mirage, still in the wrapper. I got it sealed. But then there's this great, album called The Alternate Mirage, which is basically on the deluxe edition of Mirage. And it's got all the demos on there. And if you listen to the demo for the song Empire State, it's slow. It's actually slow. It's slowed down. It's actually recorded and then slowed down. And then what he would do is he would take that and speed it up and see what kind of sounds he was getting out of things. So he was really kind of, again, that's where I've always thought of him and Jeff on the same level, because they take songs and they work them and they kind of enhance them. And he's good at adding those little pieces in too. He adds those little quirks that make it, wholly his. And like, so yeah, anything from Tusk until Tango in the Night is prime experimental Lindsey Buckingham.
For sure.
And if we ever do go insane, I mean, that's going to be just a freaking,
well, we should. That's an album. That's definitely
very that one. If you can get on board with that, and we did, so much the better, because then when they regrouped for Tango in the Night, he had that behind him, all that knowledge of the Fairlight Computer and all that kind of stuff. So again, like he keeps growing, he keeps searching, right, and he keeps he keeps trying to expand the horizons, and that's what makes the Fleetwood Mac album so interesting, is because you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the Fleetwood Mac comfort food that you love, right? A song like Hold Me, which is kind of like Think About Me and Don't Stop with the vocal interplay, right, between Stevie and Lindsey. You get all that beautiful stuff, but then you get this crazy Eyes of the World stuff and Can't Go Back, and you get all this great.
He throws you off balance, off kilter.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it interesting.
You least expect it. Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's like, what's coming next? It's a Lindsey song? Okay, I don't know what it's going to be. Yeah, but I know it'll sound great. And the stuff he writes is catchy. That's the thing too. He gets the lion's share on all the albums. Since Tusk, he would always have, like, if there was like 10 songs on an album, he would have 5, and then the other 5 would be split between Stevie and Christine. So he always kind of had got mini solo albums out of the Fleetwood Mac releases. So you can kind of look at, how he was getting better at production and arranging and all that good stuff.
Yeah, he was doing the lion's share of the work too. I mean, he was the one that was constantly trying to push the others into doing more and trying to formulate some sort of a, more cohesive kind of thing. I at least I like to think so. I mean, I always thought, the proper Fleetwood Mac album had to have been those earlier records, because they were building those albums together. Whereas it seemed a shame where everybody was just kind of like, after a while, Stevie would just come in with her songs and Lindsay would take the task of working them up and doing it more or less. None of her songs sound anything, if you would listen to like Belladonna, they don't sound anything like what Lindsay does with her songs. And nobody has made her sound as good, half as good as what Lindsay has done over the years.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's, it's a shame that dynamic is no longer there.
Yeah. And that was a point of contention that we find out about this much later on, like in interviews now.
Yeah.
He will state in 82, I still wasn't over her.
Yeah.
Like I was not over her because of the way things happen. And I think we've mentioned it on Rumors or one of the other, Fleetwood Mac things we did. He's like, you break up with someone, normally you don't ever see him again. But we had to stay together. We had to work together. We had to fly together, be on stage together. And goes, and I never, and even up to the song Go Insane, he said that was written about Stevie Nicks.
How could you?
So
I think
yeah. And I think she's it's a mutual thing.
There's no closure there. There's no real, like you have to have that time apart to realize, to think about the things you've been through. And if you can come as adults and talk that out and have that conversation and just the opportunity to say goodbye to one another properly. And yeah, like you say, they didn't have that opportunity because they were constantly working together. So,
instead, I have to produce her album and I need her song and I need to make it sound as great as possible because that's my job. I'm a musician and, we have product to put out. So he said, sometimes I didn't really feel like doing that just because of the personal stuff, but I have to do that. So, we always think about Rumors as like the breakup album, but as we're finding out and as they're both releasing more information, this thing carried on. Even though they had broken up, there was all these the feelings that were still there between them and unresolved. So it's kind of
it's. I mean, the tell is
now it's drama.
The album cover alone says everything. Like Stevie with that pose, and she's like lying. That dramatic like thing, and then Lindsay's just looking at like Christine over it. It might as well be anybody else, really. I mean, it's just sort of like I mean, it says everything. It's a lot more there than we thought naively back in the day.
Sure,
we had no idea that this kind of stuff was still happening and still going on, and we'd like to think they were all getting along, and that but that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
It's just it's too bad.
Too bad. So a couple of firsts. For this album. This was the first album I got into as a Fleetwood Mac fan.
Yeah, I remember that. This was a very special album for you, I think.
Yeah. There's some stuff we may touch on, and we're not going to go fully. We won't go fully into it, but it was my first concert. Mm-hmm. My very first concert was Fleetwood Mac, and that was September 14th, 1982, at the Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey.
Mm.
And that was the Mirage tour. Dude, there was only 32 shows in that tour. Who does, like, back then, they had toured, I think with Tusk tour, there was 119 shows. For the Mirage tour, it was only 32 dates. That's like a month. Yeah. I think it was like September. They started it in September, and I think by October, it was, or early November, it was done. Like, they were finished.
What?
So we're done. 32 dates. Tour's over.
Well, the Tusk tour really took a lot out of them. I think.
That was massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it just jumped back in. And like you say, like the solo albums in between. Yeah, that's only just a few years. We're talking 80, 81, 82.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're constantly, these people are constantly working.
Yeah.
First CD I ever heard, right? We've told this story courtesy of you.
And what a fine CD it was.
Yeah, it was the digital era was upon us.
Yeah.
In the mid 80s. So even though this album came out in 82, it was not on CD in 82, but when the CD revolution began, Eric got a CD player, and he put the headphones on me and pressed play, and my mind was blown after that. I was just kind of like, as soon as Love in Store came on, God.
You got me that CD. You bought it because I knew that I was getting that player for Christmas. I was there, and I could see my mom like buying it. So I played. I played dumb, And and then you, based on that, you actually got me that CD, because we were both fans of it. So of the album, and then and it's to this day it's still, I think, a really great production.
It's an audiophile CD.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's one that you
sure.
can put on that when you want to test your you want to test your system out, you want to test your speakers out. It is recorded a little low for me, so it is one of those ones that you kind of got to push the amplifier a little bit to get it going.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know if that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it sounds so crisp and clear that it's not distorted when you crank it.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of led me, when I was looking up like the concert date and all this other kind of stuff, I was kind of like, well, when did I actually get into this then? Because there was an occurrence in 1982 that accelerated it.
Mm-hmm.
I had started dating this girl. We're not going to go too far into it, and she was older than me. At the time, and she was very much into music. She was very much, that's who I went to Fleetwood Mac with. So when I was dating her in the summer of 82, this was all that was being played. I mean, she was playing the Police, she was playing like Fleetwood Mac, she was playing the Eagles, and really kind of opening me up to it. But there's an occurrence that happened that made me doubt that was the beginning, because Lindsey Buckingham was a musical guest on Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
James Coburn. I am the owner. Muppet movie. I am the owner.
I am the owner. Yeah.
They never rerun that, and you can't even find any footage of it. That was February 6th of 1982.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important? Because on February 6th, 1982, I was in my bedroom recording that performance on cassette from a little TV that I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I can say that in February, I was already into Lindsey Buckingham, because he was performing songs from his solo album. He did Trouble and he did Buona, and I recorded that with my boombox off of a little TV that I had.
Yeah.
So that must mean, if we're kind of counting backwards, if I was already into him in February of 82, it suffice it to say 81. I must have been peaked, and because I already knew Buona, I knew those songs, so I must have gotten Law and Order in 81 on cassette. So only thing I could think of.
I'm pretty sure you did, as I recall. And
like
did you know? I mean, it's probably a stupid question, but did you know at the time that he was even in Fleetwood Mac? Did you?
I believe I did, because I think I'd gotten Tusk on cassette. Yeah. I remember listening to Tusk a lot. So I think by the time I started dating this girl, all these, like Kevin Costner said in Field of Dreams, all the cosmic tumblers kind of fell into alignment where, this all came together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Lindsey Buckingham thing, getting into Fleetwood Mac, and then a new album coming out, and me being into the quirk of Lindsey Buckingham, and then kind of just following right into
Sure.
it,
Yeah. And that must have been, I would like to think that was a very special time to kind of jump into that, because let's face it, everybody had rumors, everybody knew that album, whether we were huge fans of them or not. Did we know names at that point? We were still relatively young and naive. Yeah. You don't necessarily make those correlations, but it's like, I distinctly remember you getting into Law and Order and you having it. You even lent it to me. Check this out. I remember it was that and Xanadu. Like you had the cassettes, and I borrowed both of them from
two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Well, and I made tapes based on I had a double cassette, so I made I taped those tapes that you let me borrow.
That was pre Napster.
Yeah.
Right. So he would take that was in the age of the dual deck, and you could just dub whatever
deck, and you you could fade shit out, and
you could play and record, and you could get a dub of the whole thing. I
loved it. I used to, the mixtapes I used to make, man. I miss it so bad. But yeah, I mean, and again, it was the same thing for me. It was that around. That's when I really got to know Fleetwood Mac. And of course, I was also, I had Belladonna as well. I got into her in a big way. And our mutual friend, John, he
Johnny
was
was big into her, yeah.
really into her. But yeah, I mean, we kind of shared that experience. I mean, we didn't have quite the experience you did with, dating, the dating thing. And, it wasn't a personal thing for me as much, but we really dug the music, and then we really appreciated that happening. And then somebody coming along and really kind of nurturing those things that I got into later on in the 80s, which was all about audio recording. And it's because of people like Lindsay, and it's because of people like Jeff Lynne and what they, and who they loved, with the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. And so yeah, that was the start of it and on that journey. And I to this day, it's why these albums are so special. There's something more akin to just being a pleasant record. And it is. It's a very pleasant record to listen to.
It's a learning experience. Like you kind of, you're getting exposed to not just a guitar, bass, and drums, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But
right.
When you hear different things happening, different sounds, and sped up vocals, and you're just kind of being exposed to it. But then it's easy to listen to. Also, that's the great thing about Buckingham, is that all this stuff is infinitely listenable. Like it's not like, ooh, again, it's like everything fits. Just to put a cap on the whole dating thing, really when this album took shape is after that person broke up with me, and I was so young. I was like 16 at the time, kind of really immature, first love, heartbroken. The songs on this album then took on a different meaning, and they took on an intense internal meaning, especially like Can't Go Back and Book of Love. And, some of those lyrics started to hit in a different way. So this album is important not only for my musical education, but then music which I wasn't experiencing, is music on an emotional level.
Yeah.
I had always spent my time listening to music that was fun to listen to, or catchy and poppy. And I love listening to music. But then all of a sudden this album took on something different.
Sure.
It became an emotional thing where I'm listening to lyrics and they're tying to things that I was feeling, which hadn't never happened, when you're an adolescent. But then when you find yourself, in love or out of love, isn't
that the greatest feeling though? Isn't that, when you look back on it, isn't like, I mean, it could have been anything. It could have been any album at the time, but it wasn't. It was there. It presented itself. You were already into it, and then like you say, it takes on that special meaning. And that's why it's one of the greatest albums for you.
Yeah.
Because you're normally with this entire podcast, you are Mr. Logical, Mr. Objective, and you pride yourself on being that way. I'm always more subjective in that sense, because I'm always leaning towards what you just said.
Yeah.
And but it's just and it's part of our experience, I think, in growing up together. At least I knew that was happening. At the time. So it's special to me too.
Yeah.
In that regard. I wasn't feeling those kinds of things, per se, at least not yet, but
exactly. Your time would come.
My time would come. Of course.
Right? And that's the thing. Yeah. It's, and like I said, so when I listened to this album, I listened to it for its brilliance and its production. But then there are certain songs I listen to that will take me back to 1982 as someone whose heart was broken. And and that's the beauty of art is, music, movies, everything. It's a time machine. I think our friend Ray Fry said it. He goes, it's a time machine.
Yeah.
It could take you right back and make you a kid again. And for whatever that means, for a kid that was, had the whole world in front of him, a kid whose heart was broken, a kid who was finding out about music. All these different things are all encapsulated in the stuff that we listen to. And we were there, like if you think about it, Eric, technically we were there for Fleetwood Mac's third album with Buckingham. Like that was still kind of new, right? I mean, this was their 13th Fleetwood Mac album, but it was only the third.
That's right.
No, I'm sorry. No, take that back. The fourth, right? Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, Tusk,
The fourth.
Mirage. So fourth album.
Right.
But again, the beginning of the 80s and all this stuff was kind of.
But then how great is it to want to go back and discover the older stuff too? Like this band has a very sordid history.
Yes.
You know, look how many guitar players they've gone through.
Yes,
and that was part of the journey as well.
I did that too.
Fun of it. Yeah.
Then Play On. I picked up. Picked up Killing House, which is one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac albums because it's so weird. I gravitate to it. All right, let's talk about Stevie Nicks and Christine, because they're no slouches on this.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Stevie Nicks, her first song on the album is a song called "That's All Right," which actually dates back to the Buckingham Nicks era, because that was actually a song called "Design of Love." Okay. And if you remember the lyrics, there is the lyric, hope you find a love your own design to love.
To love, which is a great lyric.
I have the Buckingham Nicks version of "Design to Love."
Okay.
So I kind of it made me like that song a lot more. That it was from an era that she plucked it from, and it seems like a lot of these songs Stevie Nicks has hanging around. Like it seems like she's got almost a just a collection of I can I'm not really keen on the stuff I just wrote, but here's one from way back. Let's bring that one forward. Let's work on it and see what we can do.
Right.
So she seems to have an endless well of material that she can pull from, and that's all right. Kind of has a country-ish feel to it. It's got an easygoing feel to it. It really fits. It fits the album well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And again, just referring back to some of those reviews, which, whatever, but it's like that they said that was one of the songs that didn't quite work, which is kind of odd for me, given the fact that they started out that way. They started out sort of a folky kind of, duo. So it's no surprise to me that that Lindsay would have those abilities and make it sound as it did. I had read that it was about her grandfather, but when you listen, we read the lyrics are just kind of like, to me, it screams she's singing about Lindsay. I didn't know that this was back from that era.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's because I thought for sure that this was like nakedly those words are. I mean, she might as well be speaking. Hey, listen, I'm trying to say goodbye here, and I just wish you well. And that's really what the song is reflecting there. And it's a great song, especially those harmony vocals that kick in there.
Yeah,
or that's the big win for me right there when they, the chorus part is fantastic.
Because we don't really get that too much in this album, because pretty much I think with the exception of Love in Store, Stevie Nicks doesn't appear on any other songs unless she's singing them. Like Can't Go Back was completely done by Lindsey Buckingham. Like basically the Lindsey Buckingham stuff is 4-piece.
Yeah.
Lindsay, Christine, John, and Mick. And because a lot of that stuff was pretty much already done, and then they just put their stuff on it.
As usual.
Love the same thing. Like it was all his, Empire State was all him.
Right.
Oh, Diane, Eyes of the World. All these, maybe Eyes of the World. Christine is definitely on Eyes of the World.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, you could definitely hear her.
It seems like she kind of does her vocals and then kind of cuts out and kind of leaves. And then because she doesn't play any instruments. So there's really, I don't mean this in a harsh way. There's really nothing for her to do after she's done that. And like I said, Buckingham at this point was a self-contained unit and kind of bringing his stuff almost done. So I don't know. But then she would hit with Gypsy, which is like, textbook Stevie Nicks.
That's a gem, though. I mean, it always has been, and it still remains to me one of my favorite tracks by her. It's just, and of course, credit has to be given to Lindsay for that, because, that's really the reason why I love the song is Lindsay's sort of those vocals that he's like throwing in there, just sort of kind of emulating maybe some Beach Boys there. I don't know what he's really trying to channel there, but it's just like, but I love that. I love that those vocals in the background. And I think it's a combination of him and Christine.
Yep.
It has to be, because she's definitely got a slightly lower register in her voice than Lindsay. Lindsay's pretty up there, where he can be, where he can tweak it to make him sound higher. But and then I just read that most of the song was recorded. He used the glockenspiel on it, like the guitar,
really?
the ding ding ding. It's like a glockenspiel. It's not just your traditional guitar. Like that was the main instrument he was using for that part, for those riffs on there, which is interesting. And
then that extended guitar solo. There's versions where it's edited, but then there's the version where that thing just kind of goes on and on, but it's good because it's just it's peppy, it's sugary. The guitar solo, it doesn't extend out of its bound. It stays in this like kind of repetitive loop, but it kind of enhances what John and Mick are doing. They're just kind of holding it down and letting him just go, it's kind of really just kind
of. No, I know I mentioned this several times before, but I don't think there's any finer rhythm section than John and Mick. That they really just simplistic, but they know how to keep that rhythm going, and it's solid, and it's a foundation, and they knock it out of the park every time.
Yeah, I think that's what allows the rest of the band to do what they do. Mm-hmm. Especially Buckingham, it allows him to kind of have that foundation. Yeah. Of okay, this is this is solid. This is solid ground that I'm going to build on, and then just kind of again get build it from there and have all these different branches of the tree. But that trunk on all these things, even Christine's, even like something like Only Over You, which is just kind of that ethereal. Yeah, it's got the back. It's got that whole thing. Written about God, the train wreck that is her relationship with Dennis Wilson.
Dennis Wilson. Yep.
I don't know how she fell so hard for Dennis Wilson, but she did. Yeah. And I think she said he I'm paraphrasing, but he was like the best and worst person. Because at this point when she connected with him in 82, 81, he was in bad shape. Yeah, I mean, he was a notorious drinker and drug taker, but at this point he was in the final spiral because he would pass away in 83. Mm-hmm. So he was kind of in the final throes of just drinking. He couldn't even play drums. His voice was shot. Yeah, he'd been thrown out of the Beach Boys or quit so many times. Either he would quit and come back, or they'd throw him out and come back and say clean up, and he couldn't really play anymore. But she was just and that's Christine. I think we said it in our tribute episode to her. She just she's at her best when she's in love, and she always just puts all that stuff. She puts it down on paper, right? And she sings it, and her voice is it's just got that beautiful thing to it. That makes you like when she sings it, you believe that she's in love. That it's real for her, and that and as corny or sappy as they are, it works because like you said, she has a lower register, so there's a little bit of a husk behind it. I think one of the reviews I read, the old reviews, called her honey voiced, which I'll take. Yeah,
that's accurate. Yeah.
So
that's fair. Yeah.
Again, when you get this stuff on here,
but that's something to count on, though. You want to count on songs like hers. Exactly. After the craziness that is Lindsay, and then you got Stevie, who's sort of in between there, and she can sort of move and shake a little bit, do something maybe a little bit different, but you can always count on that steady, the steadiness from Christine McVie, which is the reason why when they work together like this, or when they made such beautiful music together, that it's just to me a shame that they couldn't collaborate on that level of just doing something all in the same room, all together. Like I always wanted that to happen, and especially at this stage. Yeah.
But they would do it with Buckingham McVie. I mean, they worked together on that album, like intensely together. but yeah, you're right. She's like the grounding force. She's like the stabilizer of Fleetwood Mac. Again, like I said, you wonder what you're going to get on each track, but then you get to her, and it's kind of like, okay, it's kind of like a reset. It's kind of like, okay, here we go. I'm going to kind of gently close out the album, close out this side, and then you get to the other side, which is Empire State, which you said that he used the glockenspiel on Gypsy. On Empire State, Mick Fleetwood gave Lindsey Buckingham this kind of a harp. I don't know if it's like a sit down harp, but that plucking noise that you get on Empire State is the harp. So this guy, again, you give him something, like Jack Nicholson said in The Departed, John Lennon, if you give me a tuba, I'll fucking get something out of it for you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Just kind of, again, using what you've got to make great music, and so Empire State, again, it's just typical experimental, great stuff. And then if you get the ultimate, the Mirage expanded deluxe edition, that version is just so strange because it is slowed down significantly. Then it speeds up at the end, and it's just got this whole different feel to it. But I like seeing how these things kind of.
And his voice, I think I prefer the alternate version too, because his voice is like much more like
it's slowed down.
But when he yells, though, like when he's got that voice, when he like yells, and he has that sort of like not screaming, but like he has got that power to his voice. That's the Lindsey I love. Yeah, and it's clear, and it's it's not. He's not, like I said, he's not trying to scream or distort his voice in any way. Yeah. It's just so, and there's several moments on this record where he does that, but and then of course the bass line at the end of Empire State, even on the record, that bass line is killer, and it just, John just takes it out like that, and it's just phenomenal. So yeah. I mean, there's a lot to like. There's really a lot to like. It's very we're probably making a bigger deal than maybe most people would think, but I mean, I consider this record one of the most underrated in their. I'm surprised that people don't value it as much as we do. I guess I don't know.
Well, I think because you hear Gypsy and you figure, okay, it's more of the same. And because Gypsy and Hold Me were like the really two big ones. And those are very emblematic of the Fleetwood Mac sound. Hold Me is very much, that interplay with, that one, the interplay between Christine and Lindsey when their vocals are just weaving in and out of each. Yeah. Sometimes you hear him pull out higher vocals. Sometimes you hear her. Mm-hmm. Their vocal interplay is just so great. We got it in Think About Me. We got it in Don't Stop. It was destined that they would make an album together.
Clearly, I think it sounds like they're really enjoying working together in that sense, and then that piercing guitar solo that, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are, how low the song is playing, if you're in a supermarket or whatever, I hear it, but you hear that friggin' that piercing guitar, I mean, it if you're listening to it, you have to do this, it's because it's that, but when you hear it like being played in an elevator, I mean, you could definitely hear it a mile away. It's just,
it's like, oh, that's Hold Me.
Crazy. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And another one, the song Straight Back, I was never that much of a fan of. I always thought that was kind of like throwaway. Supposedly it's about what's his face, the producer. What was the producer? Jimmy Iovine.
Jimmy Iovine.
Him. Supposedly about him. But recently, when I've been listening to it, I've been picking up that Christine kind of ghosts her vocal on certain parts of the verses, and that's really what makes this special. Is because you don't really hear that. Usually, her songs are her by herself, and she's kind of being Stevie Nicks and just kind of giving delivering the song, but. For Straight Back, it's kind of like letting Christine in there and letting her kind of back up and kind of support some of those verses. Mm-hmm. For me, that's the magic of that song is that interplay, because like you said, and we've said, these guys usually operate as three individual units that are in a band.
Yeah.
They're, her stuff is her stuff, Christine's stuff is hers, and Lindsey's is solely his.
Right.
But they play on it, but so to get that vocal interplay on that song too, I think really kind of, again, helps kind of ground this album and kind of connect it and kind of give it that Fleetwood Mac-ness that people might feel like, oh, well, I don't hear like, I don't want to know type vocals, and
that was
that where they would
lacking
all
on
sing
Tusk.
together.
That wasn't there on Tusk because it was very, very stark in contrast to what was
very
happening.
little of that. Maybe on Angel and a couple other songs, but that's about it.
Right. Trying to get back to those, but I'd like, I for me, that song I always had a problem because, like I just said about John and Mick, for some reason, Mick tends to be a little, the beat isn't quite there for me. Like it's almost like he's that close to missing the beat, like in a sense, because it's like very lazy, like it kind of languishes a little bit. So it's not sharp. It's not like, but then it kind of just works itself out. And like you say, it's the moments where Christine, comes in, and then it's just that little keyboard, that nice little effect there. But yeah, I always liked the song. But I never knew it was about Jimmy Iovine.
Yeah.
She had
so
many
maybe we need J.K. Simmons in there for Mick Fleetwood. Were you rushing or dragging?
Yeah, what are you doing? Exactly. That's the right word. He's kind of dragging. Yeah.
Which was it?
Yeah.
You saw Whiplash?
Oh, he's such a prick in that movie, but it's so good.
It's awful. It's like it's a horrid movie, but you can't avert your eyes. Like once you start watching it, it's like, I have to see how this, and it is a train wreck. It is literally a train wreck of a movie.
It is
that you have to like watch till the end. So it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So, were you rushing or dragging? Slap him in the face. Anyway, we said that, what was it? That's All Right was from the Buckingham Nicks era. Lindsay went back to the Buckingham Nicks era for Eyes of the World. That main riff, that dun, 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 that's from the song Stephanie on the Buckingham Nicks album. That's copped right from the instrumental called Stephanie. He kind of took that little phrase, changed maybe a couple of notes at the end, but then made and Eyes of the World is one of my favorite songs, and I'm so happy that I got to they did it then. And then I think when I saw Fleetwood Mac, when it was just Stevie and Lindsay, I think they did it then because they had so much more room to do other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just a kind of a rave up. That's a Buckingham quirky, weird. Just at the end, it's just that solo just kind of takes off. It's just kind of all right,
It's one of the first songs to utilize that like the voices like coming
where are they
out of the atmosphere kind of thing, which he would do a lot on Tango and of course
and go insane. It's the same thing, like coming from different speakers, vocal, half words, half spoken lyrics. He was getting there, and again, it's exciting. What at the time we didn't know what was up next, but when you now when you look back at the discography, you can kind of see, oh, okay, you could see where this was heading, and then it became interesting when Tango came out because it was like, well, what is this going to be like? Because Go Insane, like I said, was just insane.
Yeah. And
how is he gonna rein that back in? And he there was still all that Tango we should probably do, even though it's not your favorite, but it's a band that's kind of dissolving, but there's still a lot on there. There's a lot of stuff there that
I really have to really dive in and give that a I've said a lot of bad,
you bad-mouthed it.
I bad-mouthed several albums, but
albums.
Since then, I've given them another shot, kind of like, after, it's nice to return to some things after a while, and maybe it has something to do with the airplay, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe, you're just kind of tired of hearing it over the years. It's just, that's the only way you're actually listening to it, and you don't really want to listen to it in its entirety because of that
you
kind
ever
of
hear
thing.
little lies over and over again.
But for me, it was always about the production on that record.
Yeah.
It's just a little too sickly sweet for my taste.
Yep. Very, very shimmery. But
again,
not in a bad way, though.
Would love to revisit it.
Yeah,
and
we
can talk about it.
I mean, we will. I mean, what are we going to do? Not we're going to do every other album from that lineup except for that, because that's the only one that's left. We've done all the. We didn't do the first one. We didn't do the first one, so we're going to get to them. But
yeah,
I think all this stuff. I think a lot of this stuff. Because I know you weren't a fan of going back and reassessing some of this stuff. Because I remember when we, a while, even I think before we started the podcast, I had mentioned something about Styx, and you're like, yeah, I don't listen to that anymore. Like you had kind of put a marker in and was kind of like, yeah, I don't listen to Paradise Theater. I don't listen to any of that stuff anymore because So
it's true.
I think sometimes stuff gets put away because you think you've done it. And you think, yeah, I've listened the shit out of this album, like back then, and sometimes I think one of the great things is like revisiting some of these albums, because you're not the same person you were when during the last.
No, you're not.
Like during, at that point when you're like, I'm just tired of this, or I'm just, I've moved on, things have changed, and then you're able, you kind of reassess things a little bit, and which is what I love about this I love about what we do,
right?
Because you rediscover some things, or you get maybe some nostalgia kicks in, or maybe you're older and you're the age of the artist at the time, so now some of the stuff maybe connects a little bit more. So
I often find too, if you really honestly, there's the test of time really kind of just makes that point of like, well, there really isn't anything that sounds like them anymore either. I don't really, if you listen to somebody like Styx or something like, you're not really hearing that a lot today. You're not really hearing what was done back then. And it's like, and then, you're kind of like, okay, well, that may be a factor too, because, sometimes it's about not necessarily thinking that this stuff is better per se, but just the fact that nobody's really doing
where you're going to get it. Yeah, where you're going to get that from.
Thing.
Sure.
That specific thing with Zeppelin or the, or any of the bands that, we were into,
Sure.
But also also being into certain, I find that for you, it's like I'm surprised that we've done episodes on artists that you weren't really into back then, like that I find that you're just getting into now, like, I never knew you to be like a Bruce Springsteen, necessarily a fan, but like we did, we did Born to Run, and we did Billy Joel, and now you actually went to see Billy Joel. So now you're like, and it's like,
I wasn't ever down on him, but he wasn't in the,
he wasn't in the wheelhouse at the time of our, like, right. And, it's like you say, things happen in weird periods in our lives. So,
that's the beauty. Like, dude, like that is the beauty of this. It's like, all that stuff is just sitting out there, and it's ready when you are.
Yeah.
And some things you may never be ready for, but like Billy Joel. It's like, of course I listen to all the stuff. I love, I love his greatest hits and stuff like that. But, I didn't go over the edge. I didn't take that extra step.
Right.
And then, when we started to do this and when I started to collect vinyl, I felt like I should have The Stranger. I really should have that album. If I'm going to collect albums, I really should have The Stranger.
If there's one to have, sure. That's the one.
I never had it, never listened to it. Like, and then, what a revelation, right? It's like, wow, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, like there's 9 songs and I know 7.
Yeah.
How am I sleeping on this? Why was I sleeping? So then you kind of start, your interest gets piqued. And like you said, there's no one like Billy Joel.
That's true.
There's not an art, like you could literally say, I mean, there might be out there, but how do we find it? How do we find that now? Back then, it would be put in front of you. There was only a few avenues to hear music, and that's where it was put in front of you.
It with all the technology we have and all the streaming, it is more difficult, I find, to really know where exactly to look. I suppose with the advent of like AI now, it can like, oh well, if you like this artist, here's some artists like I could recommend you listen to, and I've done that, but that doesn't always work.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out. You know,
so
it's a strange. So then you kind of end up. You know, the good thing about it is that whole Billy Joel discography was untouched by me largely. So I got to go back and listen to An Innocent Man and be like, oh, back then it was like, okay, tell her about it. It was like, okay, this is throwbacky. But then when you understand what he was trying to do and you get the overall theme.
Exactly.
Like, oh, okay.
And for me, it was the opposite experience because that was like my first Billy Joel album was Innocent Man, the first, very first one, even before The Strangers. So it's like I knew it, I'm used to it, like that kind of thing. So I mean, I'm digging it too. I'm digging there's sort of this.
Yeah, you were like, it took you long enough.
Yin yang approach to things, right? I mean, it's like we're going back, going forward, kind of thing. That's what's beautiful about it. You and I were also very fond of looking down upon, I was into him back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the case of people like Lindsay and Jeff.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh yeah, those
the newer fans that are coming on board and just kind of like
absolute smugness.
You were not a fan of let's point that out. It's that acoustic album he made.
Yeah,
you were not a fan of that, Under the Skin. You were not a fan of that at all. I loved it because I loved the fact that he actually
I should reassess.
Found the guitar and that he's playing guitar instead of doing all of these quirky things, which was different, But but at the time, I see what you're saying about the fact that a lot of people were kind of into this sort of folky thing again. Some of these artists that were coming out. With just an acoustic guitar and doing this kind of thing. So Lindsay was kind of...
I was pretty smug about that,
and
him.
Lindsay was kind of taking advantage of that, though, if you think about it. He was like, he's making himself relevant. So, and he did I think he did a great job.
Yeah, no, it worked for him. It worked for him. But yeah, there's that scumbag, that air of scumbaggery. It's like, oh, you didn't know about Lindsay. I've liked him for 20 years.
Yeah,
where the fuck were you?
We're both guilty of that. We do that all the time. Yeah,
of course. But I'm having the last laugh with ELO because all these people that love him now, I'm like, and there are people older than me that probably laugh at me and probably I saw him in '72 in Birmingham. It's like
now it's Genesis too. Genesis people are loving Genesis now. All of a sudden, everybody loves Phil Collins now.
Yeah,
and so I was like, I've been a fan of. I mean, I got so much shit for liking Phil Collins over the years, like so much. Yeah, but yet now I'm like,
the clothespins on your jacket again.
There you go.
Get those clothespins out.
There it is.
I don't think we need to do favorite tracks. I mean, we talked about most of it, and
it's a winner from beginning to end.
Yeah,
there's
it will test you though. Like again, if you say I love Rumors. You're going to come this is the closest you're going to come.
I
honestly
agree.
If it's not Rumors 2.0 and it's not Tusk 2.0, it's kind of an 80s marriage of that because like we said, not to belabor it, but Lindsey Buckingham would never be the same again. He's not the secondhand news guy anymore. He's not the never going back again guy. Like he's not that Eagles-y guy, Southern California guy.
Right.
Whereas most of those other people like Eagles and Jackson Browne, they kind of stayed, and Fleetwood Mac was in with them. And maybe that's what makes it so unique is that he broke away from us and great. You can do that. But, I'm hearing these other things and I want to try it and fool around with it. And then it just stayed with him. Which may, again, he was like, and that's the proof was in the pudding because Belladonna came out and Law and Order came out and one was a hit and one was a miss. But one was critically acclaimed. Like he was always a critic's darling. Like even people, the critics were like, oh my God, this is it's so strange. It's so weird. It's Beach Boy.
Oh yeah.
It's like Smile. It's this, it's that, but it didn't sell anything. And the same thing with, and then Out of the Cradle was like critically loved, but it still did he couldn't get a hit.
No,
as great as Out of the Cradle is, which is it's a masterpiece.
Oh, it's my favorite, absolute favorite. Yeah,
it's like, but where are the sales? And there was so many hits. It just like for some reason, and Stevie Nicks could turd out, talk to me and rock, like whatever it is, room's on fire and all this other stuff. And people like, yeah, they're eating it up, so that probably
because it's Stevie Nicks.
Yeah. I think
she had that power, I guess.
Persona, it was the whole thing. It was the persona.
Yeah.
Like she built this whole Stevie Nicks thing.
To her credit, of course. I mean, this isn't a bad thing. I mean, she
probably what she always wanted.
She nurtured that kind of an audience. They love her. They still love her to this day. I remember when Tango came out, and I simply didn't like. That's part of the reason I don't like the album, because I think she sounds horrible on it.
Oh yeah, it's awful. It's her worst stuff.
People didn't seem to mind, though.
She says now it was horrible. Like she goes, "What was I doing? I was." Yeah. So I think we'll do Tango. We should do Tango. Because it's an interesting way to kind of look at what would be the last full Fleetwood Mac album with the classic lineup. I mean, that's also what that
true.
is outside of the dance, but the last studio album. I think it's important. So we'll probably get to it, I think. But anyway, what do you think? For Mirage, Yeah, it's a special album. Easy listen. And it's got so much to it.
It's an easy listen, but yet not, though. I mean, I dare say that it's a little bit more than that, and that's where I was a little disappointed to hear
trying to
that
get people to listen to it.
Yeah, but I know what you're doing there, but to hear like some of the critiques of it back in the day was like the main, like I said, the main consensus was that it's just a very safe record. I don't know if I agree with that. I think there's moments on it that really, if I had to use a word, it would be there's a refinement there. Lindsey has gotten to that point where he knows what he's doing in the studio. He knew exactly, and that really shows on this record. I think.
Let me end it with this question to you then. Going back, based on what you just said and what the critics were saying, my question to you would be, on Mirage, was there any new ground that was broken? And that's probably where the critics were looking at, is saying, okay, is there anything, Tusk was this weird animal. It was this weird thing. And it was interesting. We had to give him credit because it was so weird and it was such a chance. And now we have Mirage, and now they're saying, okay, well, for a band that subverted everything that they were going to do, that literally shot the golden goose with Tusk, what are we getting? That's, they almost by subverting expectations, they also probably reset the expectations very high, because like, well, you gave us this really quirky album that's really strange. Now what? And it's like, oh, well, now we're going back to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So you're
probably right. Yeah.
No, I'm asking you, do you feel like what, from that aspect?
I just think that, like I said, I mean, like there are songs that, especially from his point of view, that like, I think it's a step up from that, and especially in that production sense. So if there's anything that, anybody can get out of that, it would be that, would be his approach and the level of confidence that he obviously has on this record.
And the sound.
That's where I feel he stepped up. Even on Law and Order, it's Law and Order it's almost very just slightly above being sort of demo-y.
Yeah, it's lo-fi.
Like it's lo-fi. It's like it's just not
very DIY.
Right. It's not. Yeah, exactly. So here there's a refinement. There is a and just his approach and just on his work on the other songs as well, on both of the Stevie and Christine stuff. So he kind of really asserted that. Yeah, I think he asserted that leadership role. Yeah.
On this album of right. Yeah, I can take your songs and not just do my stuff, but I can shape your songs too, as a contributing member, as someone who's kind of understands what you're looking for or can bring stuff in to enhance it. And I think the big thing is that they trust him to do it.
Yeah.
Is that they had that trust of, because he would produce, Tango in the Night, and then, of course, Say You Will. Rob Cavallo did some production work on Say You Will, but yeah, that became his thing. Is like, he's kind of like, kind of behind the board, making sure those songs are taken care of in the right way.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
My only,
them, so
it's a shame too. My only not regret. It's not my regret, but it's regrettable that he didn't produce a lot of other artists.
Yeah.
Because he definitely had the talent to.
Yeah. He just kind of, he did a lot of work with the Killers recently, and then he was on the 9 Inch Nails record. He did a couple songs with 9 Inch Nails.
He's collaborating, but he's not
collaborating, but. Yeah, he could have. He was in demand in the late 70s. He did a lot of. He did Jon Stewart. He did Walter Egan. He was working, but I don't know if people just didn't ask for him or he just turned stuff down, because it's not like he's very he certainly had time, to do stuff, But I don't know. I don't know why.
I wonder if people.
I want the guy that produced who produced Fleetwood Mac. Oh, Lindsey Buckingham. Well, let me get Lindsey Buckingham.
Yeah, but that's where, like, are people listening to Fleetwood Mac solely because they love Stevie Nicks? And that's where I find, like, he never seemed to get the credit where credit was, you never hear somebody, you don't hear people say the first person they think of is Lindsey Buckingham. Let's face it. It's, people think Fleetwood Mac, it is Stevie Nicks. She's the star. We may not agree with that, but I think for the most part, people probably don't even know the name. Like, who's Lindsey Buckingham? I know it's true of me, of people that I know and that I've, friends and stuff. Who's Lindsey Buckingham? Oh, he's the guy in Fleetwood Mac. Okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think, and we'll probably leave it here. When you say Lindsey Buckingham, you think, oh, he dated Stevie Nicks and they broke up. Like you think more about the drama and less about even though and people get around to him. Oh my God, he's an incredible guitar player.
Well, people know that now.
It kind of ends there.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, he was, go watch the Silver Springs video. She lays into him. Like it's become that kind of meme thing where that's what they're known for now, especially in this kind of meme society.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, but like over the years, just
that clip of her, shooting darts into him and him staring back at her. So it's kind of like you said, it's kind of like, well, that's what they are now. Like they are that soap story and they're about the great music, but I think that's the only level of the onion that they go through. Like they don't peel back any other layers and go further down. And as much money as that made them, I think it also hurt him because he doesn't. Some people know it's like, I want Lindsey. Oh my God, Lindsey Buckingham. We can get him. Mm-hmm. Like the Killers, like all of a sudden became like really big fans, and he would work with them. But it's too bad. But we can always hope. There's still time. There's still time, Lindsey, if you're listening.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. If you made it this far and you haven't hit the subscribe button on YouTube, here's your last chance, your last ask. Just go ahead. It's right down there. Just hit it on your favorite podcast provider. Go ahead and follow. If you want to be a Green Room supporter, go to buymeacoffee.com/3324. buymeacoffee.com/3324. You can become a Green Room supporter. You get a little extra things there. We gave you some demo episodes of when Eric and I were just fledgling podcasters and we did practice runs. Those are actually up on the Buy Me a Coffee site. You can listen to that kind of stuff and some other fun stuff there as well. So I think that's going to do it. We're putting the cap on the Mac. Right?
For now.
For now. You've got 2 albums left if you're counting, unless we decide to really go further back.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're keeping score, there's the first one and then their last one. So it's apropos that we've done all the middle stuff. So we'll get around to both. But that's going to do it. So we will see you guys real soon. For Eric, this has been Dean, and we will absolutely catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.